All right, we are calling to order the Wednesday, November 18th meeting of the Corte Madera Climate Action Committee. So Rebecca, can you go ahead and do roll call?
And then when I do roll call, I usually do it alphabetically with the chair and vice chair last. Leslie Alden.
Here.
Eli Beckman.
Here.
Ed Conti.
Here.
Blaine Corin. Ann Doherty. Meredith Foster.
Here.
Michael Harlock.
Here.
David Johnson.
Here.
David Kuhnhart.
Here.
Ted McKay. Barbara Rothkrug. Okay. Martin Wall.
Here.
Vice Chair Amy Rose. Oh, see. And Chair Sarah Goody.
Here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's salute to the flag.
And then, Sarah, you can go ahead and just lead us in saying the pledge, and
Okay.
we'll all say it along with you, and it'll be horribly out of sync because
And usually Eli has a flag in the background. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United
States of America
and to the
the
republic
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God, indivisible,
visible,
with liberty
and justice for all.
That never goes smoothly.
Okay. Thank you guys for that. Now is open time for public regarding non-agenda items. So anyone wishing to speak on non-agenda items will be recognized at this time. These items can legally have no action as they are not on the agenda, and there is a 3-minute time limit for public. I
am still not seeing any members of the public in attendance, and I did not have the public comment email open, so I'm opening it right now, but I did not see any when I checked earlier today. And no, there were no emailed public comments.
Okay. Then we'll move on to item 3, general business. So 3A is an update from staff regarding revisions to the climate action plan as recommended by the Climate Action Committee and next steps for formal adoption of the revised plan. So I will pass it on to Phil to give us an update on that.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the committee. A lot of you, I don't think I've met. My name is Phil Boyle, and I'm the senior planner with the town of Corte Madera. Been with the town for getting close to 6 years now, and have been the staff person who has been attending the Marin Climate and Energy Partnership meetings for the last 5 or 6 years. And also have worked with Christine O'Rourke in the creation of our climate action plan back when it was originally created in 2016 and then officially approved by the town council in 2018. And we've been updating it for a hopefully a final product. Maybe we'll make it in 2020. So I also did climate action plans for the town of San Anselmo when I was there as well. So the update on the climate action plan for Corte Madera 2020 is after reviewing and listening to your minutes from your October meeting when you all discussed it. I took that and I communicated with Vice Mayor Kuhnhart and committee member Wall regarding the edits that Martin had specifically on the climate action plan, and he and I worked together, and those edits have been made and incorporated into the document, and it is pretty much ready to go. I think maybe one last thing that would be what I would recommend is we handed over to one of our fine Corte Madera staff not myself, who's really good at editing and formatting and making sure everything is pretty and perfect. But based upon your meeting from October, I got the sense that you all were ready to take it to the council for their adoption. And so that was my understanding. And correct me if I'm wrong. And the document is, I have the final version. Actually, I think Commissioner Kuhnhart and Commissioner Wall have the final version as well. And so it is ready to go. So that is my update, and I'll certainly take any questions that you have.
Madam Chair, this is Eli. Could I ask a question if that's okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Thanks. Thank you, Phil, for that awesome update. I just had a quick question, and I realized that it's way too late for me to be coming to you with this after the amount of work that's already gone into this, and after this committee has already voted to approve the draft. But I recently became aware of the fact that having an equity component in these climate action plans is really becoming kind of like the industry standard. I don't recall seeing that in this draft, and yeah, I take responsibility for that too, because I didn't know that was something that we should have, and I didn't comment on it therefore any earlier. I was just wondering, obviously this is the type of thing where you don't really want it to be like an afterthought or like just something that you tack on, and you want to actually be something that's thoughtfully woven throughout the entire plan, and it's too late to do that for this cycle, unfortunately, I think. But I know that as kind of maybe an interim step, I believe the San Rafael and possibly also the San Anselmo climate action plans have what I would call like a rudimentary equity component, where it's like, maybe it's like a page or something that's towards the beginning. And I would hope that in a future revision, we might be able to actually more thoughtfully kind of interweave that throughout the entire thing. I was wondering if for this particular draft, we could just at the very, like as a bare minimum, get something like that in here. That is all I've got. Thank you, Sarah.
Sarah, may I speak?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I want to point out, I think that San Rafael did a remarkable job on their overall on their climate action plan, but I want to recommend that Phil and anyone else who's working on climate action plans and general plans, that you take a look at Oakland's climate and equity action plan. They really baked it in. Equity is woven all the way through it. And I certainly understand Mayor Beckman's comment about, is it too late? And we don't want to make it an afterthought or an add-on, the last bullet point, on the slide. But I do think that it's something that we should be aware of and be talking about, even if we feel it's too late to start incorporating those ideas. I would submit that maybe it's not too late, that maybe we should reframe things a little bit and take the time to do it if we feel that that's the appropriate way to go forward.
Perhaps we could ask staff to conduct an assessment of kind of to what extent it's feasible to incorporate that into this draft that is already substantially complete, with the understanding that doing it more thoroughly throughout the entire thing is going to be a must-have for the next revision down the road.
Sure, I'd be more than willing to take a look at San Anselmo, San Rafael, and Oakland's, and I could continue to work with Commissioner Kuhnhart and Commissioner Wall, or go to the whole committee. How would be the best way to communicate with you all? Because I certainly do agree that we wouldn't want to just kind of cut and paste someone else's and change the name of the town or the city. So I'm sensitive to that, it being, a truly Corte Madera equity component.
Yes, go ahead, David Johnson.
I think we're in a discussion period now, so I would advocate for completing this cycle that's been in place for 4 or 5 years, and then moving on to a next cycle and incorporating climate justice into the next plan, rather than delaying this plan even another day.
Good point. Equity is also about our seniors and low income. It's not necessarily limited to race, but it's also about the economics and age and disability. So just as we think about this going forward, it's a little bit broader than BIPOC, as yeah. So I think that delaying this is a really big concern, and we should all pay attention to that. But maybe there can be a paragraph or two added that allow this to not get lost in the discussion.
Go ahead, Vice Mayor Lunar.
Madam Chair, I don't think it's absent from this draft. I was just scanning through, and I can't instantaneously pull forward, but I don't think it's absent, and I would like to restate David Johnson's statement. I too think that it's time for us to adopt this and move on. And it doesn't end by adopting it. It doesn't end what we think about and do and practice. And another part of our agenda tonight is part very much shaped by equity. So I would suggest that we close the book on this chapter and ask for that final prettying up, as Phil mentioned, and move it to the council at the earliest opportunity.
This is Ed. I support that approach as well.
I personally would go ahead and support that as well. Would anyone like to comment before we move on to our next agenda item?
Do we want to have the committee have a vote of adoption of this version, this date, this November version?
I think we should do that.
Go ahead and do that. All right.
Well, then I would move that we adopt the present draft with the understanding that there may be some additional formatting and perfection that happens between now and the time of the town council. So one date would be added to this one, which is the date of tonight. There's a blank for that. There's already a space for that when this committee acts.
I'll second that.
And Madam Chair, before you take a vote, you may just want to call for public comment just as a formality, even though there are no members of the public in attendance.
Yes. Would any members of the public like to comment? We don't have any, so yes, David Johnson.
Just as a question, is it more appropriate for one of the committee members to propose a to make the motion rather than the motion coming from the mayor or the vice mayor?
I actually agree with that. I agree with that.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
I take it back. I withdraw my motion.
If it suits the chair, I would move to approve the draft as prepared as of this date for review and approval by city council at the earliest occasion.
I still second that.
Right. I will ask again for public comment.
Is there going to be a actual draft update? It wasn't, I mean, it was included on the agenda as an update. I know it's a little loose, but okay, we can go with that. Generally, items that are voted on and acted on are agendized as coming forward for action, a vote, and this agendized as an update.
Okay.
So not exactly sure how to proceed with that, but
We could do belts and suspenders and take the vote anyway.
yes. Okay. Leslie Alden,
Aye.
Eli Beckman,
He's on mute.
Yes, sorry.
Ed Conti.
Everyone should unmute for this moment.
Ed Conti. Blaine Corum.
Blaine, if you're there, you are on mute. If you could please unmute.
I'm in Ed's and I don't know why I wouldn't unmute, but
Thank you.
I.
Ann Doherty. It could be that Blaine is abstaining because he joined the conversation late. Meredith Foster.
Yes.
Michael Harlock.
Michael, you're on mute.
Sorry, aye, Captain.
David Johnson.
Aye.
David Kuhnhart.
Aye.
Ted McKay. Barbara Rothkrug. Yes. Martin Wall.
Yes.
Vice Chair Ruas. Chair Goody.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Rebecca, may I proceed to the next agenda item?
Yes.
All right. Now we shall move on to item 3B, the discussion and possible recommendation to Town Council regarding the climate emergency resolution. We will discuss the proposed draft resolution and any committee member contributions to the draft, and consider providing a recommendation to Town Council regarding adoption of a resolution declaring a climate emergency. All right.
Do we have a copy of that? I don't see it.
It was included in the
It's in the
email.
agenda packet. I've included both the agenda and the full agenda packet.
It's not opening up for me. I'll try again. I'll pull it.
David, would you like to speak?
Sure, Madam Chair. In the last meeting, I made the point that that it would be good to review the document together one more time. The document was put into a Google Doc and it was shared with the entire committee. I personally made a couple of recommendations, and I think that they were reviewed by others in that format of a Google document. And so I hope that others would agree that this is something that we proceed with and that it's important to push this forward. So thank you for letting me contribute in the way that we did. It was great. Thank you.
Rebecca?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to point out to the committee, in case anyone else was having difficulty with the document, that the agenda packet includes both the draft version supplied by Vice Mayor Kuhnhart, as well as a redlined version PDF of the comments that were received via the Google Docs. So I also did send the Google Doc link out with the agenda when I emailed the committee, but there are PDFs available in the agenda packet that was published online.
I've got it. It looks great.
Vice Chair Ruas, would you like to speak? Or we can't hear you, or I can't at least. Is that just me?
No, I can't hear either.
Okay. Sorry, my dogs are barking. Amy, maybe the headphones?
Maybe you should call in on a landline, Amy.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yay. Okay. So I just had one question related to this. I'm in favor of it. And for all the changes, Dave. There was one line up above there. If you look at the document, the area that you inserted, there was a paragraph. And right above that, it says, and I don't have it in front of me because I'm looking at the screen, but it says something about report out progress against this annually. And I'm just curious who would be responsible for that.
Vice President?
My sense is that it's us as a committee that would be responsible for reporting on progress. And we actually talked about that a little bit at the town council meeting last night under the discussion of whether in responding to the civil grand jury report, should we have a single sustainability coordinator for the town, or should we have a committee that oversees and reports and pushes its agenda? And it was not 100% completed discussion because that comes at the next town council meeting, but it was largely agreed that this committee would really take that role as an outside kind of watchdog and observer and advocate.
Leslie?
There was also a conversation in that discussion last night about sharing staff with maybe Larkspur. And I'd like to hear Phil's thoughts about this as well. I think that we can provide oversight, but I think that in terms of the data that would allow us to really be able to analyze, progress, that's something that might be outside of our expertise. So whether whether staff that exists can deal with that. I know that Phil attends the MCEP meetings, whether that could be something that we work with Christina O'Rourke on, or how, but I don't think that we should be the experts. I think we should be the oversight.
Yeah, I can just in relation to last night's meeting and the idea, I think two ideas were thrown out there. One of sharing staff with other jurisdictions such as Larkspur. Another was using consultants for specific tasks and specific projects. Commissioner Kuhnhart and I were talking before we began the overlap of sustainability projects in Corte Madera. Some are handled by the planning and building department, myself, and then quite a few are handled by Public Works, RJ Succo, example, the adaptation plan, the proposed improvements to Paradise Drive, those kinds of really specific things, and the bailiwick of Public Works, and then many other things could be under the bailiwick of planning. As also was mentioned, budgetary considerations need to be thought about in terms of adding additional staff. So those are all the different points that I just want to mention. Yeah.
One more thought about that. As Drawdown Marin 2.0 comes forward, and we don't know quite what that might look like, the county really has offered and done a lot of analysis that is then shared with the cities and towns. So we don't know what the 2.0 is going to look like and how far the county is going to be willing to be that source of expertise and analysis, and perhaps grant writing as well for implementing solutions. But that should also be one of those things that we keep in the back of our minds as we move forward with this.
Thank you, Leslie. David Johnson, would you like to speak? And then Amy?
Yeah, I would. I've reread the portion that you outlined, Amy, and I believe that, or I personally would trust council to instruct staff share those progress reports on an annual basis.
Amy?
So I think that, that's great. That would be great. And I would love to be able to see, as it aligns to the cap, what we're measuring and where we're trying to get, so that at least as a committee, we know, okay, this is where our goals are and annually how we're hitting those. If oversight is the way that we position that and we have resources to do that from the town, fantastic. If this is something we need to, I just want to make sure that we're all, and we brought this up in earlier meetings too, to hold ourselves accountable. So I just want to make sure that we have a process for this and we're all clear on what that is.
Could you clarify for me what paragraph we're talking about here? I'm having a little hard time identifying exactly what the question is.
Yeah, so if you look in the document, it's on the second page and I've highlighted it in yellow and I just noted in a comment how and who. Do you see that, Ed?
I'm looking at a printout, so I don't see your highlight. But
So go to it's the last line of in the second page. It's
Would it be
paragraph
helpful?
1, 2, 3,
Would it be
4.
helpful if someone shared a screen?
Mhm.
Does anybody have that on their screen that they can share?
I can't. I'm on 2 computers. And I can
Here,
read
let's see if I can.
and I can
I
read
will
it.
try
to
to
you.
share this. Thanks, Leslie.
I found it. Sorry about that. I kind of looked a couple times and glossed right over it, but I found it. Thank you.
You could make that a little bigger, please.
For those of you who see it, the
You're
line is the
muted,
policy
Leslie.
and strategies to advance sustainability and resilience and to regulate, this is the part that I commented on, to regularly assess its GHG reduction goals, actions, and policies, and provide progress reports and metrics annually. And so my comment was, great, this is great, but how are we going to do this?
Understood. Yep. Thank you.
I would just recommend, Madam Chair, that we pursue this as vigorously as we do issues of finance and other critical concerns to the town. That there is going to be interpretation in this document. It'll be for council and staff to interpret that, and that I hope that with the mayor and the vice mayor here, they would understand that what we're talking about here is a rigor and a reporting mechanism as critical as the town finances are reviewed on an annual basis.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment?
I would just, Phil from the town, I would just like to add, and I'm sorry, I'm still not seeing that part commenting, but I just add in terms of the climate action plan and in terms of reporting on greenhouse gas reduction in the climate action plan. That's a pretty extensive process that Christina Work goes through each time. And so I think it might be a real challenge for her to do that on an annual basis. So I'm not.
Yes, David Johnson. You're muted.
Yeah, I would recognize that it is ambitious and it's going to take time. But I would, rather than rejecting this language, I would put it back to the council and to staff to agree on what can be done rather than remove language from this. I think that this is something that's going to have to be evolved and continue to be improved, but it can't be denied.
Okay. Thank you. Vice
Madam
Mayor.
Chair, this is Eli. Could I weigh in real fast?
Eli, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I would just say that kind of agreeing with what David just said and recognizing the concerns that Phil is raising here. I would say that, even if we can't in this committee tonight agree on, a revision to the language that makes everybody completely comfortable that, that it's going to be achievable. I would say that, I think council certainly trusts staff to make a recommendation to them when they present this resolution, letting us know kind of what their candid assessment is of what's doable. And I would just note that council has historically been, I think, very deferential to staff's, candid assessments of their own kind of bandwidth. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Kunert.
Agreeing with both of the prior comments, now is not the time to sub-optimize. Now is the time for us to push and let others push back if needed.
All right. Well, then I believe next steps. Would anyone like to chime in, Vice Mayor Kuhnhart or Mayor Beckman, about what we will do going forward?
I'd love to hear someone make a motion to adopt this, for the committee to adopt this and send it forward to the to council.
I would love to move that this committee approves of this resolution, and we send it to the council for their vote.
I second.
I second.
Oh, sorry, we're still in screen share mode, so I couldn't see who seconded that. If you
Martin,
second,
go for
raise your hand.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Great. Then I will open to public comment. Seeing we do have an attendee, is that correct, Rebecca?
It's unclear. Are any of the committee members also phoning in? We do have a phone-in listener. Or if you're the phone-in listener and you are a committee member who needs to be on the panelist side, can you raise your hand and let me know? Not seeing any hands, but thank you for checking.
Great. Now, Rebecca, would you be able to take roll call?
Leslie Alden,
Yes.
Eli Beckman,
Yes.
Ed Conti,
Yes.
Blaine Corin, Ann Doherty, Meredith Foster,
Yes.
Michael Harlock,
Yes.
David Johnson,
Yes.
David Kuhnhart,
Yes.
Ted McKay, Barbara Rothkrug,
Yes.
Martin Wall,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ruiz,
yes.
Chair Goody.
Yes. All right. Let me grab back to our agenda. Now, moving on to item 3C, the review of recommended climate action plan actions by each subcommittee. So subcommittees will each present items for recommendation to the town council for committee discussion, and committee members will be asked to vote on which items to forward to the town council for possible actions. I do know that a few of the subcommittees did decide on action, so I will run through the list of subcommittees and ask for the subcommittee chair or a member from that subcommittee to put forward those actions. We will start off with the Energy Subcommittee.
Great. I'll jump in, and then anyone from the subcommittee, please chime in if I misrepresent in any way. So for those of you that have the document open, the master list actions and goals doc, this is also outlined on the energy caps.
Do you want me to share screen again?
So there's really great. Oh, that would be great. But they really fall under 3 buckets. So the first one that we're recommending is 1.4, and it's to promote existing residential and commercial rebate and incentive programs through MCE and PG&E.
Yep.
And we're bucketing under that 1.6, which is promoting MCE deep green, because that pretty much falls under there in terms of the incentives and measurement. So if you, not the measurement, but essentially incentives to help adoption of MCE deep green. So we've sort of nested it there. So if you look at this sheet, and I won't go through all of it, but certainly ask questions. We've got ideas around Acton for the rebates and incentives. And the first step is really just compiling a list. And then you can see over to the left the goals and some of the metrics that we'd like to measure on this action, which is in addition to what you see in the CAP. The second piece, and that's community-based. We looked at this community and municipal. So the next action is 1.9, which is line 17 in the sheet, and it's municipal, and it's replacing all street lights, traffic signals, and park lights with LEDs. And I believe, Mayor Beckman and Vice Mayor, let me know if I'm wrong here, but I believe this is in motion for the Town Capital Improvement Program for 2021. And so a goal for us is really to understand the energy and operational cost savings. So those are 2 at a high level. And then we've added 2 new recommendations. So this doesn't sit in the CAP as such, but both community and municipal, we'd like to create legislations with timelines that disallow or ban new natural gas hookups in new construction, as well as major renovations. And then also for the town of Corte Madera to discontinue the use of natural gas in all town buildings in new construction. And for the big difference between the town and a community is really about timing. For the community, we would love to create a timeline and let people know when this would go into effect. Whereas for the town, we'd love to be able to do this effective immediately. So I will pause there, see if there are any questions, and please, other folks on the subcommittee jump in if there's anything else to add.
Starting, Leslie, I do believe that you are sharing the agenda, not.
Oh, sorry.
No worries.
I was wondering why I couldn't figure that
I'm sorry. I'm looking at this thinking that, okay, hang on. Let's start again.
Do folks know what doc I'm talking about though? Are you able to get in there?
Okay, wait. Safari master list, master, there we go. Sorry. Now, are we good? Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay.
And
Almost.
confirm with Amy, that is items 1.4, 1.7, and 1.9.
Yep.
Okay.
And then scroll down. Leslie, go to the tab that says energy cap.
Make it bigger, make it bigger. Or zoom in.
Hang on. I don't even know how to do that.
And you'll
And
see.
you can't zoom on Zoom?
There you go.
I don't even see where that would be. Hang on. So it's really big on my screen.
Control plus.
Okay.
I was gonna just drop the link into the chat. Is there a way to do that so everybody can just open it?
I believe is there a chat? I see a Q&A.
I did enable the Q&A, but we disable chats for town meetings.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's better to all be looking at the same document at the same
Yeah, it is. I just have to figure out how to make this bigger.
I don't know if you can, to be honest with you.
Oh, it's up there where the 100% is. You can have a look at that.
Okay. That's too big.
There we go.
Is that too big?
No.
Okay. Thank you for, now I learned something. That's great. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so if you scroll down a tad, there's 1.4. Everybody can see that. Promote existing residential rebate and incentive programs for both residential and commercial. And if you scroll down, Leslie.
Sure.
There we
How
go.
much?
That,
Tell,
That's it.
say when.
there we go. Perfect. And then there's one, I think it was 1/6. There's 1/6 that's deep green, promoting MC deep green, but then so that sort of nests under the first one. And then 1/9 here is what's highlighted on the screen. So replacing all streetlights, traffic signals, and I believe this is in motion or in the town capital improvement program for 2021. So I see David nodding.
Yes.
And then lines 24 and 25 were new recommendations that David brought forth and we discussed as a committee, subcommittee last week and would like to put forth to the council. So I guess one of my questions is, as we, as a subcommittee aligned on these actions, it seems to me the first two that I went through are ones that as a subcommittee and certainly as a broader committee, we can work together to educate and build awareness around these programs. And then 1/9 obviously is a town item, but for 24 and 25, do we actually have to bring those forth to the council? Like, I just want to understand next steps there. If the full committee agrees that these are the right actions.
I have a comment about 24 and 25. I'd really be as an architect, I'd be very interested in the timeline for implementing this type of thing and whether it applies to renovations or absolutely new construction, because gas as a form of heat is at this point in time the primary source for new construction residentially. And I'm not opposed to it, but I'm very interested in, does it apply to, at what level it applies to a new house or renovating, and what the timeline is. It seems somewhat perfunctory, or I don't want to say drastic, but it seems very hard to implement. I'll leave it at that.
Amy, if I may.
Please.
Michael, I very much understand the sensitivity, and I think the thought here is not that we suddenly as a town say nobody may use gas, but rather no new hookups. And so if somebody is renovating a house that has gas in it, this would not apply. This would be if somebody is planning on building a new property, the town would essentially be saying, hey, check out heat pumps, check out other ways of gaining heat. There are
thank you for pointing out the new hookup.
New hookups, and
that helps.
This has been done in Santa Rosa and Windsor. They're just passed it in the city of San Francisco, and Berkeley has a form of this, and so it's the whole building decarbonization movement is really rolling forward to say no new gas hookups. You can save money rather than putting in a new line, and you can make it safer and look at the alternatives that are increasingly efficient and increasingly available.
Okay, thank you, David. What's your comment on 25 in terms of implementing? Because it seems like the language is that underscores it by saying immediate change. Is that how would it apply to all town buildings at the present?
Well, I think that's a bigger challenge in a way, and I think it would, cause some immediate discussion about how for one example, we take the steps to change out gas stoves in the community center. So I think it's a little tougher to achieve than the municipal lights motive, which we are already engaged in up above. But it would be the direction that we as a committee would be signaling that we should aim to do. And the town, as you, Michael, have said previously, the town should be setting up itself as the best example. If you can do it, then you can ask others to do it, but don't ask others to do it until you do it.
I'm totally in agreement with the objective. The language sets up implementation headaches to me.
Yeah, and I can provide a little more context on that. So when we look at the community or the residential piece, it's setting a timeline that people would be able to see that this change is coming further out. Whereas if there's new construction in the town, that we would use that as an opportunity to switch out or any new lines of natural gas then, meaning that the community and residential builders would need a heads up, if you will, whereas the town would be less in need of that, I guess, is the way we were thinking about it.
Well, I won't belabor this, but I think 25 suggests somewhat of an immediate proclamation that I can't see as implementable.
Okay. So I'm going to just note that and just revisit the language here so it's a bit more clear. And we can refine that a bit because I see your point.
Yeah. If I could just say one more thing, I think several people have said in different ways over different meetings we've had, starting in January, it's important for us to have some goals that are sort of low-hanging fruit and we can gain ready success and say, yeah, we did it and here's why we did it. And that would be, goal 1.8 would be an example of that. And it's also important to set some sort of big audacious goals that are going to take a little bit more time and maybe a little bit tougher and maybe get some pushback, but both ends of that spectrum of action are needed. That's what some people said, and I agree.
Hey, Andy, can you, or whoever has the screen, can you scroll a little bit so we can see all of column F? No, scroll the other. So I think this is uncomfortable by design. And the column F there is that we would work with the town manager to activate this. It may be immediate means upon the need to replace equipment. But the spirit here is to get the city off of fossil fuel, get the town off of fossil fuel at the most immediate time. I think that the wording could be improved, but the intent here is for the town to lead by acting so that residents can see motion.
I definitely agree with that. Don't take me the wrong way. In fact, I think a lot of this, I'm kind of for putting in shake up language that like gets people to read this stuff. But the wording of this one, if you really follow it into the weeds, is you say change out equipment. Well, you're going to change out a gas furnace in the town center and replace it with what? It has huge fiscal implications in terms of immediate activation. So I'm open to see how you would reword it. I don't want to belabor it.
Just to build on what David Kuhnhart said, now there's 27 cities in the state of California that have adopted reach goals, and there's 2 communities that have changed their law to, in the case of San Francisco, disallow gas connections in new construction and major construction as of June of next year. So I don't think we're too far off, but Michael, I agree with the need to revise the language to have it be as aggressive as possible without undue financial burden.
As soon as practicable.
I would say with the way that the military has done this in the past is to change the language instead of justifying why it can't, when it can be done, justify why it can't be done. Let's turn this around to say, instead of when is it possible to do it, why is it not possible now?
Could you put that language back on the screen? At least my screen is not showing the language we're talking about. So there we go.
Excuse me, Chair Goody, if I may interject briefly. I'm not sure if Vice Mayor Kuhnhart or Mayor Beckman can speak to this, but the council did address this issue last fall, about a year ago, almost exactly a year ago this time, when they adopted every 3 years they adopt building codes and fire codes for the next 3 years. And at that time, I was just looking in the minutes to see, because I remember this being a discussion. And of course, COVID happened and everything went by. But I know that staff is working on reach codes, and I don't know if it's going to be in the next 2 or 3 months, but it will be early next year when this is brought back before council. And this will be part of that. So I don't know if you want to have these subcommittee members work with staff or through your council liaisons to make sure that the reach codes that are brought to council are what you're envisioning. But the minutes do say, and these are the minutes from the November 5th, 2019 council meeting, where it says, Councilmember Kuhnhart asked if Mr. Fenty was recommending the council not approve new gas hookups for new construction, and Mr. Fenty confirmed there will be some specific considerations for this in the Marin reach codes. Staff will return, and it does say within the next 60 days, with Cal Green amendments that will be similar to the county codes. In the minutes. So obviously it has been more than 60 days, but I do know that staff has been asked to work on this.
Thank you for bringing that back. And you're absolutely right. And this is a perfect example of why having a climate action committee out here is important, because for various different reasons, some of them very practical and very good, and some of them mysterious, that action hasn't moved forward yet. And so we just need to come back and say, guys, now it's time. Let's actually get there.
Yes, I will try to get an update for the committee on when that's expected to be brought back before council. Obviously, it's not going to be in the next 2 council meetings, but
and it would be, it's going to be easier for you to do that if we say it ought to be done.
I would just draw, Vice Chair, I would just draw the distinction here that this is not, that line 24 is not a reach code. Line 24 is a legislative change for the city, for the town. So this would not be an encouragement. This would not be something that would be waivable. This would disallow natural connections for new constructions and for major renovations.
Before we,
There's a distinction between that and a reach code.
Could somebody, I'm ignorant of what reach code means.
Reach codes, as they've been deployed in the state of California, are they can be preferences, they can be waived, they can be they can be avoided. There can be overriding circumstances. There can be other things. This would be simply for the town of Corte Madera, after a date certain, new construction would not be allowed to connect to provide a connection to natural gas, and major renovations, as the town defines a major renovation, would not allow for gas hookups. This is a decarbonization direction, that leadership that the town would provide beyond a reach code. This is not a reach.
Thank you. Before we continue, I'd just like to be considerate of the time and that we do have other subcommittees to get to and the actions to get to. So I would like to just finish this conversation maybe within the next few minutes, and then be able to look at this and be able to look at these actions before our next meeting. So if we could kind of bring this to a close, I think in the next few minutes, that'd be a good idea.
Could I say something? This is Martin.
Yes, go ahead.
The reach is, as I understand it, the reach is like it's a reach for us, not it's a technical reach as opposed to legislation. It's just something that we said is, I think that's it. And for the town, what's the inventory of town buildings? Maybe we ought to have a look at those before we, decide how difficult that's going to be. I mean, I heard someone say town center, but that's not a town building, for example.
I meant, if I said that, I misspoke. I meant the recreation center, the community center.
Okay.
I'm having a little hard time with it feels like we keep switching, and it could be I'm just not tracking it well enough, but there's the one aspect of legislating all new construction has to be natural gas. And that's a very different aspect than mandating the conversion of existing town facilities to not use natural gas. So
Yeah,
to me, the two different lines here, and I feel like we keep switching back and forth between the two, and one is a legislative change and the other one is not. So maybe we just need to separate these two discussions very clearly. I get the sense that there isn't much pushback or disagreement on this idea for all new construction. The language that we've been talking about is the language for directing the town manager or the town to convert existing buildings and the fiscal impact that might have. So anyway, I just feel like we keep switching back and forth. So I've actually lost track of which one we're trying to resolve.
No, that's a good point.
So
I think Sarah said something good. I think we should
I just
send the
to jump
committee
in.
back to look at the wording.
Yeah. So I'd like to propose that we take a pause on our energy discussion, and I don't know if anyone has any idea for what can be happen in the meantime before our next meeting as to clarifying and rewording. If someone would like to take that up, if anyone would like to clarify with me, I don't know if I'm getting this wrong, what that next step would be.
So why don't can I make a suggestion? Why don't we move forward with the actions and the activations up above outside of line 24 and 25 and come back with some thoughts on that. And then for 24 and 25, we will reword for this committee to review. For 24, unless there is a sense that we shouldn't move forward with this, I guess I would just like to understand next steps and what our subcommittee can do to move this one forward. And I guess that would be for
I would just repeat that.
Mayor Beckman and Vice Mayor. Go ahead, Ed.
Oh, sorry. I just was going to say again, in separating the discussions, I'm not sure there was any disagreement on 24. The wording problem is in 25.
Right. So we can come back on 25, and it would be great to move some action forward on 24. I just want to be clear on what that is.
I think it's perfectly acceptable for this committee to
Like,
make
would it be up to our subcommittee subcommittee to create a timeline and create those that had created the reach codes.
I think it's perfectly acceptable for us to adopt the things above the phrase additional recommendations and to have an additional recommendation tonight on 24 that would go forward to the town council as just that. That's an additional recommendation
Okay.
that action happen. And then, yes, that we subcommittee should look at rewording 25.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, then, so are we, Vice Mayor Kuhnhart, could you clarify, are we voting to put forward number 24 and the above today, or looking back at them and moving on to just discussing the next actions?
Amy?
I think we're putting forward line 24, line 17, line 13 and 11, and coming back on 25.
Okay.
Do we need a vote?
Do we have to move?
I
So
think we
moved.
can move.
I missed who did that because we're still in screen share. If you could, when you make a motion, if you could say your name, please.
Do we have to be so formal about this? Can we, if we're just talking to the committee and their chairman, can we just say, this is what we'd like to do, as opposed to a formal motion? And unless this is critically necessary, it's just all these motions. That's just a thought.
I honestly have no idea. I've never had a committee quite like this.
Can't we just tell Amy to go do it?
Well, typically this kind of committee will be prepping you for future participation in other boards and commissions for the town. And we do, have formal procedures that we do follow in our meeting.
Yeah, well, another way to go would be for Amy as head of this committee to say, does anybody object to having this committee make a recommendation to the whole to move forward on these items? Hearing none, we have consensus, let's
Okay.
go. And we don't have to then go through each and every vote.
Thank you.
I like that.
Okay. Does anybody have an objection if we move forward with lines 11, 13, 17, and 24, and then come back with reworded language on 25?
No.
Great.
No.
Perfect.
Can I ask what you envision as being the next steps? Would you imagine, and this is a question for the Vice Mayor, would you expect that the subcommittee head would then work through either you or the mayor as the council liaisons to bring this to staff? Or how would these recommendations move forward? Would I then carry it to staff?
How about Phil?
Phil's not here anymore, I
Yeah,
think.
just need to know what the expectation
That's why I said,
is.
how about Phil?
Otherwise, this will disappear into a void. And
I'm sorry.
Phil
I'm sorry. I heard my name, but I didn't hear what came before it.
I think Rebecca's the best messenger for this action myself, and to take it, report out as we report out on what we've done today. These would be items that we're reporting out, what we would like to see done. And then it would go to town manager to decide who is the next person to receive and deal with it, whether it's Phil or somebody in Department of Public Works or building.
And Rebecca, what I can do in the case of energy is I can summarize it for you so it's easy, and maybe each subcommittee does that so that it's clear with the action and then what we're suggesting. Would that be helpful?
that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, great. I'll take that as an action.
Perfect. So as far as continuing through our subcommittees, in considering time and that we still have another action to get through, does it make sense? What are your thoughts? Should we either have the subcommittees who have their actions revise them and create a clear, precise wording of what they're proposing, or should we go ahead and discuss those briefly, 5 minutes, 10 minutes? I don't know what timing is looking like, how people are feeling about that.
Madam Chair, this is Eli. I think that your first option that you gave may be the best way, but I of course want to defer to the actual subcommittees, because if they feel like they've spent a lot of time preparing something and they feel like they have something solid for us now, then I wouldn't want to step on their toes. But I think that if that's not the case, then it may be good, like you said, to move on to our next agenda item, and then we can come back to this if we have time left over, and if not, we can certainly just take it up at our next meeting. I do feel like between the climate action plan that we've approved, and also now the climate emergency resolution, I feel like we've already probably loaded up staff with more than enough to kind of chew on and work on getting to council. So in that sense, I feel like it's probably not going to damage our efforts going forward if we were to defer the rest of this discussion. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Then I will call to see if anyone from another subcommittee has something that they would like to say now today, instead of just pushing this back towards our next meeting and maybe working and revising the plan for those actions that were proposed. All right. Well, I will take that as a no.
Madam Chairman, can I make one comment?
Yes.
I think that it would be good to hear the other ones. We don't need to do that tonight, but so I don't send Rebecca next steps on certain ones, and then something comes from transportation and something it's we can coordinate those potentially, and so perhaps we share them over email before the next meeting just to move them along. I would propose that as a possibility.
Anyone would like to contribute thoughts to that? I would agree. I think that sending those via email, if those whoever was corresponding with their subcommittee could share that either with Rebecca or through an email, then that would be good, as to just get a brief idea of what those other actions would be before our next meeting.
That makes sense to me, especially since, as I heard in the beginning, a couple of subcommittees for various reasons haven't even been able to meet and promulgate recommendations. So why don't we, I think this is very important, as the last discussion indicated, but why don't we give the committees another chance to summarize the recommendations for the next meeting? That would be my thought.
Okay, then, so let's go with that, if that sounds good to anyone. If not, please speak up now, and those subcommittees can have a chance to send those actions forward to the group, or if need be, meet again to discuss which actions they would like to put forward if that hasn't already happened. Right. Taking that, let's move on to our last agenda item, item 3D, the discussion and consideration of a proposal to MCE Clean Energy to adopt a resolution favoring a carbon fee and dividend. This will be led by Vice Mayor Kuhnhart. So if Vice Mayor, you would like to take the stage.
Sure. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Has anybody had a chance to put their head into the memo that I wrote to Don Weiss of MCE Clean Energy?
Can someone share that on a screen? I don't believe I have it.
Oh, okay. Well, let me see if I am able to. And
It is in the email that Rebecca sent
yes,
with the
yeah,
packet.
and I have it, and I think I just did share screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
And now the question is, I always ask people to make it full screen, and I am not seeing. I am screen sharing, and I am not able to. Okay.
David,
Yes, one second.
yeah, go back to where you were, because right now what we're looking at is,
Yeah.
okay.
I gotcha. And tell you what, I'm going to stop share, and then I'm going to start again because I had it. I had it.
David, would you like me to share?
That would be fantastic if you could. I am, small clicks away from competence. But I was so happy to see that you were having a little bit of struggle before, Leslie. And if you could make that bigger. Anyway, this is a memo that I don't really expect this committee to take an action. However, I do want this committee to be aware of this recommendation, and you don't need to go down into the attachment, but just stay in the memo itself. And again, that particular sharing is too small for me to read, but this is a suggestion that the county entity that has the most competence in the area of energy policy, that is MCE Clean Energy. There you go. Bye, boy. Take this issue up and make a recommendation now to our congressional and Senate leaders, and also to, I would say, to the transition team in the new administration's transition team, to adopt a revenue neutral carbon fee and dividend policy at the national level. There are precedents that are moving slowly through Congress, and the current Congress, the 116th Congress. Those will be wiped out by the end of this year, because that happens every time you roll to a new Congress, and the 117th Congress will take this up. And already Ted Deutsch from Florida, whose name is not spelled with an S inside it, but Deutsch has been a real champion of this policy for several years. And he has already said that he will come back in January with a new version of this. This topic, this policy is one of the pillars of the House Select Committee on Climate Crisis 540-page recommendation of solutions that ought to be followed. Pricing carbon is pillar number 4 out of a dozen pillars that are recommended for the new administration to take up. Now, if you could just slowly pan down through, that would be great. The recommendation is that MCE or the board of MCE take this up and pass it. And there are many different advisors, particularly in the community of economists, who are saying, if you want to change behavior, make it more expensive to burn fossil fuels. And Janet Yellen, as a former chair of the Fed, has been very strong in this for 2 years. There have been over 3,500 economists who've signed on to a statement of support. When was the last time you saw more than 3 economists agree on something important? And this is economists from all parts of the political spectrum, leaders from the Bush administration, from the Obama administration, from the present Federal Reserve and immediate past Federal Reserves, from several different big universities. The president of MIT just came out 2 days ago and said we have to have a carbon tax as a core efficient solution. If you could go down to the next page, please. And so there have been local entities that have adopted and supported this, as Leslie knows, because she was active in making this happen. First of all, our own state legislature sent Assembly Joint Resolution 43 in support of this concept to Congress in September of 2016, supporting a carbon fee and dividend plan. Then the following spring, our own Board of Supervisors unanimously passed a similar resolution supporting that concept. Sonoma Clean Power came forward in the summer of 18 and passed a resolution supporting this concept, as have over 130 counties and municipalities across the United States, including Oakland, Santa Rosa, Sonoma, San Mateo, and the state of Utah, and now the country of Canada. There are 40 countries that have pricing carbon as one or another kind of their national policy. If you could just slide down. The reason that this is coming forward right now is that we've just gone through a few months of the absolute hottest temperatures ever measured by humans since the 1880s when we started measuring. And we've just gone through another fire season, an extraordinary storm season, and an extraordinarily difficult election season. And that is now beginning to settle out. And we know that there needs to be bipartisan action on the federal level. We're not going to get a single party. We have as a country have sent a divided Congress back in to the best that we're going to get, if you will, if you happen to be a Democrat like myself, the best we're going to get is a tie, a 50-50 tie, which will mean that everything will have to be negotiated for sure. So it is an appropriate time for our, let's say, local agency most competent to deal with energy policy to put forward something on this. Now, if you could just dial down again, please, and people can see. And one of the things that we have talked about is equity. The dividend portion of this carbon fee and dividend takes the revenue that is raised from the companies that are pulling fossil fuels out of the ground, turns it around and sends checks out to everybody with a Social Security number in the United States. Everybody would get a similar amount. Sorry, those under 18 would get a half share, not a full share, but those are, Madam Chair, I'm sorry, but you would get a half share. Everybody would every month would get a check, just like a Social Security check, except that it is coming from our diminution of the success of fossil fuel burning. There are supports that come from, as I said, academia, also the U.S. Treasury Department in their analysis of this has said that the bottom 2/3 of the deciles of income earners in the United States would come out ahead. They would net get more money in dividends than they would be spending in additional cost to their household fuel cost or whatever cost increase that's going to happen. And there will be cost increases that will happen. That's the whole point, is to internalize the huge negative costs that hit us in health and climate impacts and put them inside the development of fossil fuels. What has happened is that Dawn Weiss, the Chief Executive Officer of MCE Clean Energy, has responded very favorably. I am to let the board know in this Thursday's meeting, tomorrow evening's meeting, that this is coming and that it will be going to the executive committee rather than a resolution of the whole board, which is what I initially suggested, because that's what Sonoma Clean Power did. She and staff have suggested that the executive committee of MCE Clean Energy, which is a multi-county joint powers authority, has the power to adopt a policy change that, if assuming that the staff agrees and assuming that they agree. And so a letter with the statement of policy would go to our two senators, our respective members of Congress who serve Marin, Napa, and Sonoma and Contra Costa counties, and say, hey, take this up, make it a core part of the solution that you are considering as you put together the package of solutions on climate action, because it's fair, it's socially just, and it is the right thing to do, as according to the economists. So if you have any questions, I'd be delighted to speak about this for any length of time at any time. I'll stop right there.
I have a question. The dividend, I've certainly heard a lot about carbon tax. I'm not so familiar with the dividend aspect. So rather than the proceeds from a tax going to fund research and development of alternative energy, it goes back as a check to the population.
The predominant share of it, and let me just be completely clear, in the current proposals, the one that has advanced the furthest is in the House, and 82 members of the House of Representatives have signed on to it, including 24 members of the Congressional Black Caucus, 12 members of the Hispanic Caucus, and it has people from every corner of the United States, representing every corner of the United States. And actually both political parties have said that they like the approach of giving most of the money back. Why? Because it is a support of consumer spending, which is a fundament of our economy, because it supports freedom of choice. Instead of having Washington make decisions and say, okay, we're gonna put money into ethanol, or we're gonna put money into hydroelectric dams, or we're gonna put money into nuclear, or we're gonna put money into this or that solution. It says, let us, most importantly, put a price on the problem, and B, give the opportunity for everybody to have the ability to say, oh, I will come out better if I drive less or eat less meat, because those are the things whose cost is going up more. I will do better if I fly less and take more Zoom calls. I will do better if I get for my gardening supplies, organic gardening supplies, instead of the ones that are made from fossil fuels. That will be the way that the behavior is changed, and the way that innovation, and then businesses across the spectrum seeing that behaviors are starting to change, and realizing that costs are going to go up. Let's find ways, businesses will all across the entire economy will find ways that they can avoid fossil fuels and make costs lower for people. So yes, it is a slightly different approach from a centrally guided command and control system as they have in China, where there is a carbon price. And it's different from, I would say, roughly the NRDC approach, if you will. It's different from the Clean Power Plan approach. But as it happens, the Clean Power Plan only is power plants. It's not transportation. It's not embedded carbon. It's not any other form of the development of fossil fuels. So it's quite deliberate to make it that way. However, not all of the proposals are just putting the money to dividends. Dianne Feinstein and Senator Coons from Delaware, who is very, very close to Joe Biden, by the way, have proposed a bill that says, well, only about 3/4 or 70% of the money will go out in dividends, and the rest would go to research and development and other things. Their cost goes up more every year. So that's a very strong bill. We let the Congress work out the details. The concept, I think, is a very elegant concept. Any other questions?
If the approach is successful, though, the dividend checks will decrease over time, right?
Ultimately, they will decrease if we are successful. That is true. And how much better off we will all be when we're breathing cleaner air and suffering fewer consequences of fossil fuel burning at the same time.
That makes sense. It's just that I'm not a politician, but it's interesting when you try to take something away from people. You just said that a certain income class would get more money in rebates than the cost of their energy. And then if we switch to alternative energy, then their cost of the energy will be more than the rebate check, because the rebate check will disappear. It's just an interesting twist of how it'll all evolve. And it's easy for us to say, we don't want it anymore, or we don't need it anymore because the air is cleaner. But basically, for that group that you just referred to, it would be in the short term, using carbon means you get a check that covers your energy use. In the longer term, not using carbon means you have to pay for your energy use.
Well, no, in the short term, it means you'll come out ahead if you use less fossil fuel and get your check, because everybody will be paying in. I'm sorry, every company that develops fossil fuels will be paying in to the supply of funds, and the price goes up every year. The price goes up rather steeply. I think the important thing is the change and the innovation that will happen on the company side, on the industry side of this. Everybody who manufactures is always at the margin of finding ways to damp down on cost and increase productivity by damping down on cost. Other questions? I know that Chair Goody is aware of this because she was kind enough to come to a couple of meetings of Citizens Climate Lobby, including the regional meeting was that January? It seems like 6 years ago, last January, when there were like 90 students and a whole lot of folks from all across Northern California who came to that, including Congresswoman Barbara Lee, who's a big fan of this solution. But anyway, I wanted you to know that this is moved to the MCE, that it will be taken up by the executive committee, and they may act as they choose on doing this and putting the word forward. And I didn't want any of you to be embarrassed to say, what's Kuhnhart doing?
Well,
You're my-
so interesting. Thank you so much for bringing this up and bringing it to our attention. I had think it was very, very good to be on our minds and to know about in the upcoming future. It is 7:01 now. I would like to open up for any last comments, last questions, anything, whether that's relating to what was just presented or something else. Otherwise, yes, Rebecca.
Thank you, Chair Goody. As I included with the many emails I've been sending you over the past week, I just wanted to encourage you once again to consider dropping in on the Climate Adaptation Plan Community Workshop number 3, happening on Zoom tomorrow evening. Public Works would appreciate any attendance and feedback you want to give them as they prepare this document.
Awesome. Well, with that, hope to see you guys there tomorrow virtually, and have a great night. I'm excited to join next month and to get those emails and to hear about all these amazing actions that we're wanting to take. All
Thanks
right.
so much.
Thank you.
Great work,
Thank you.
everybody. Good night.
Thank you.
Night.